So first of all, Dan, thanks for stepping in. Mr. Musto's hot-footing somewhere in some country, sunning himself, drinking pina coladas and probably not even watching the football, but it's great to have you in, mate. And we're going to start at Tottenham Hotspur. Great stadium that they have, hosted Manchester United, two teams who came into the game in not particularly great form. I think there was something like 14th and 15th in the table at kick-off. And it was Tottenham that managed to get the 1-0 win. Wasn't a brilliant game of football, I think, because of circumstances. Spurs had some players coming back into the team, Vicario and Maddison, into the first 11. United missing so many players. Martinez, obviously, he's had the ACL. I believe he's had surgery this week. Then there was the likes of Mainu, Collier, Ugarte, missing. Ericsson was ill, Yoro was ill. So it was a sort of patchwork team from Manchester United's point of view. Casemiro next to Bruno in midfield. Garnacho, Xerxes, Højlund is the front three. Is there any kind of is there a kind of out for Ruben Amorim at the moment? Is it hard to judge him, his team, and what's happening? I mean, the run of form, I think it's 8 defeats in 12 now, something like that, in the last few Premier League games. Should we just be holding our opinions a little bit because of the situation at the club, or should he and the team be doing better?
I think, from a personal perspective, I would judge him, come the start of next season. I thought you and Tim had a really good debate on the show. I think you were saying that it should be better than what it is now, and I think it's very difficult to disagree with that. And Tim was sort of very much on the side where I am, which is, he's signed one player. This isn't necessarily his team. There's obviously a lot of work to be done there, and potentially then judge him in the summer. But there's no question about it that a lot of money has been spent on this team, and that's what's going to be thrown at him. But he didn't sign those players. So I still feel as though he's sort of on this journey, as in terms of finding out what he wants, what he needs to get rid of. And I think some of the things that he's coming out and saying quite publicly, I think is, to try and get a response, because I think the lack of leadership within the group, you know what it's like, Robbie. You're obviously in that Wimbledon dressing room. That dressing room, without question, looked after itself, and nobody stepped out of line. And I just think at the moment there's probably sort of a lack of accountability within the dressing room. So I think Amorim then, he sort of has to play the part of manager, but also leader who's not on the pitch. And for me, that becomes a problem, because the manager's job then, even at a club like Manchester United, which is already huge, I think it goes up an extra few levels just with that in mind.
You say that, and I definitely heard Tim's argument and Rebecca was saying, but when I look through the team sheet, Dan, I see 9 or 10 international players who'd play in their national teams on international breaks. I see teams like Crystal Palace, like Brentford, like Brighton to a certain degree, like Fulham, like Bournemouth, who are better than Manchester United at the moment, in a stronger place in the league, and play better football. So how is that happening? Because I get that we need time. I get that the system of play. I get that, there needs to be a turnover player. But the level of quality of player that you've got, I still feel like I should be getting a little bit more than what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think that's a strong argument. I just think that the teams that you just mentioned, they are an example of the collective. The collective being stronger than the individual. Like, I look at this Manchester United team, and okay, they created a few chances today against Tottenham, but
not usually for great football, but by the way, I mean, pressure now and then and crosses. But yeah, they did create chances and better finishing. They'd have probably got something from the game.
Yeah, but I still look at them as a team of individuals. I look at them and I see this group of players that are trying as best as possible to sort of keep their head above water.
Yeah.
And because of that, it then becomes about, well, I've got to look after myself. So therefore, you get a team of individuals on the pitch. It's like,
isn't that Amorim's role then? I hear you, and it's a really good point, because I think there is times, listen, even when you're playing in teams that are going well, sometimes you just have to look after yourself, make sure you're in the team and playing well. But beyond that, whether it's the coach or the manager, has to create that collective feel has to say, come on, it's about this, you as a back three today, or the front three, you as a front three today. Let's work together. Garnacho and Zirk say, you're going to play for the next 3 weeks. Help each other out. It just feels like, you're right, it does feel like it's individuals playing for themselves, but it feels like that's something that falls on the lap of the coach, really. He's got to engender a spirit and a togetherness about them, even if some of them are players you eventually are not going to need or want.
But I think you have to go back through the other managers as well. At some point, you have to come to the conclusion that the manager isn't the problem. It's the recruitment, it's the players that are in at the club. And I think one of the things I would say, Robbie, and this is I think this is being brutally honest. The clubs that you've just mentioned, I don't know how many of the Manchester United players would get into those teams. We talk about the money that's been spent at the club. Doesn't automatically mean that the players are good. Manchester United have been a team in desperation for so long now. So if there's a player out there that's worth 30 million, you can guarantee Manchester United are going to have to pay 70 million because of the desperation. They're getting players that Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, potentially Chelsea don't want. So therefore, straight away, you're fishing in sort of another pond to get these different players in. For me, it is the culture within the club. I think the culture within the club at the moment isn't where it should be. I think it's too easy to play for Manchester United now. It always used to be from the outside looking in, and when I was growing up there, it took a lot to play for that clubs in terms of the mentality side and things like that. And I think what's happened in recent seasons, the easy get out has been, oh, well, it's Solskjaer's fault. It's Ten Hag's fault. It's Mourinho's fault. It's, Van Gaal's fault. Well, at some point, and this is where I think Amorim has been clever. I think he's looked at it and gone, right, okay. What did previous managers do? Well, whatever previous managers did, good, bad, or indifferent, I've got to do things differently. I've got to make the players more accountable, or otherwise he's going to go the same way. So I just think he's in that process at the moment of figuring everything out.
There was a great shot of him today. He was sitting on the side of the pitch. He was looking down, and at first I thought, has he got an iPad or something? Apparently he was staring into the floor, and it made me think, he'll get home tonight, might have a glass of red wine, sit down, think to himself. I kind of wonder in his head, Dan, where's he at with this job, with the prospects of the future? Where does he think things are going to turn? Tim's argument, and I get it, that, we shouldn't really judge him till the end of the season, till recruitment comes, till we see some changes. As a young manager who's come in with obviously ambitions and ideas and ways he wants to play and players he wants, do you think he's say regretting the job, but having second thoughts? Is he second guessing himself? I thought the shot of him looking down was really telling today, almost like, wow, this is big. I've got a real big task on here today at this football club.
I think it's one of those ones, Robbie, where manager goes to the club and no matter the expectations that they have of how big a club is, how much is going on at a football club, I really don't think it becomes apparent until you become the manager of the club. And I think that's what he's found. And I if we were talking here now and saying, right, okay, they just have to get things right on the pitch and get the right system and make sure everything's okay, and then everything will be rosy. Then that's one situation, but you have to change everything. You've got to change the whole culture of the club. You've got to change the way in which you're bringing players into the club, the type of play that you're bringing into the club, because so many players have come to Manchester United, and it's been like they just disappear. And I think we speak quite a lot on the show, and we talk about the price tag of players coming into the club, and so many players that have come into the club, as in terms of the price tags being really high, they're set up to fail. I'm not saying it would have happened, but if you look at some of these players that have come to Manchester United for the unbelievable amounts of money that they've come for, if they'd have gone to Manchester City, if they'd have gone to Liverpool, if they'd have gone to Arsenal, I think they would have been in a better position to succeed, because you have a group of players around you that can look after each other. It's not individuals. I think you've got a club that's on the right path. Whereas at the moment, I think players coming to Manchester United, you've got to do so many things other than just adapt to the team when you join that club, because you're supposed to be most players that come into Manchester United at the moment, it's like, he's the saviour. He's the one that's going to turn this tide. And I think the pressure becomes far too much for a lot of players.
Yeah, becomes a culture thing, and I think that's definitely something that's not been right at Manchester United for a long time, and it's something Amorim has to get right. Just before we talk about Spurs, and Spurs fans, we will get to you. You did win the game and got the 3 points and had some good news. I just want to touch on the substitutes. I think 8 of the 9 substitutes were from the academy. 8 of the 9 were teenagers. None had had first-team experience. I thought it was really, well, whether it was necessity or boldness or a combination of the both, to have them all on the bench with, I think Lindelof was the only pro who's played. He's 30 years of age. I thought for such a smart coach, who I really like, who I think will eventually get things right, given time and given the money, which is a whole new podcast on Manchester United, money and Ineos and the rest of things. But the point I want to get to, Dan, was I thought for a smart coach, he missed a trick today. And I'm trying to in my head think that maybe at 1-0 down in the situation that the club are in, and maybe, the team not playing particularly well, he didn't go to the bench, even with 10 or 15 minutes to go. We know this boy, Chido Obi, the centre forward, these Morehouse, a midfield player I hear, these Seiko, I think, another midfield player. I just felt today, if Manchester United had lost 1-0, but 2 or 3 of those kids had come on and done a little something and been a bit bright and tried a little things, I just thought it would have put a whole different look and feel on the result. Now, again, he doesn't want to sacrifice a kid, and you don't want to put a kid in a situation where it's going to be negative for him and put them back. So I get that. But a kid who's just had a hat-trick midweek in I think the FA Youth Cup or something,
yes.
Matthias Tell played for Spurs today. He's 19 years of age. Some of these kids, I think, were 17 or so. I don't know. I just felt I would have, if it was me, I would have put 1 or 2 on and given them the experience and shown them. And if, if we'd have conceded another goal, so be it, at the end of the world. If we'd have stayed at 1-0, but maybe we had a moment, maybe we had a spark, maybe we had a little bit of enthusiasm on the pitch, which I think would have put a slightly different feel on a 1-0 poor defeat away at Tottenham. What do you think? You've been in the academy. You know what it's like, and how this club has always gone to its academy and always given the opportunity for kids to get into the first team.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the rich history, there's always been an academy graduate that's been part of the matchday squad for decades now. And I go back to my time when I was at the club and when I was coming through there, and the young players that were coming through. You go back before me as well, the class of 92, which is obviously still spoken about now. I think it was all about timing. It was all about timing, because I remember Sir Alex Ferguson, when I got my debut, I think it was last game of the season, 1998, and he had all his professionals playing. He had senior professionals playing. He gave summer break because that were getting ready for the World Cup, and I came on the last 20-25 minutes and then played a few more substitute appearances. When I made my full debut, you had the likes of Roy Keane, you had Ryan Giggs, you had Dan, players like that, the experienced players around you that could help you through. Yeah. And I think from Amorim's side of things, it's one of two things, which is either I can't put these young players on because they're just not ready. It's as simple as that. And the quality or the standard of the team is going to go even further down. Or maybe closer to the point is, why does he want to put these young players out there at the moment? Because you know what it's like, Robbie, as a young player, because obviously you got given your opportunity when you were a very young player as well. It has to be within that right environment. You have to be amongst the right type of players, because the one thing we've seen over recent seasons, Garnacho comes into the team. He's going to be the saviour. Mainu comes into the team. He's all of a sudden becomes one of the best central midfielders in the whole of the Premier League, having played one game. So the pressure that's on these young players because of the history behind Manchester United and the desperation at Manchester United, I think it's a manager that's looking at it and going, are these young players going to make a difference? And secondly, do I want to put these young players in a situation that could have a harmful effect on their career going forward? So I think it's probably in the middle of those two, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know, I saw them there, I thought it was big news, we had lots of shots on. I just felt like, and if I was one of the kids there, I'm sure I'd want to get on, but maybe you're right, maybe he's protecting them, maybe, thinking about the longer, bigger picture and the length of career and whatever. Let's turn to Tottenham, though, because I'm sure the Tottenham fans are saying, we won the game, and all week Andrew's been saying, when I get my players back, we'll look a lot more like the Tottenham that I want. I thought that at times his team played a bit of decent football. I thought the build-up play was pretty good against a United team that wasn't particularly well matched up, certainly in that midfield area with Casemiro and Bruno. And Spurs probably themselves could have got 2 or 3 goals in the first half, and it wouldn't have been such a contest. But I suppose from Andrew's point of view, he looked happier. We saw the interview after the game.
Yeah.
He got Vicario back. He got Maddison on the pitch. Udogie was on the bench. Brennan Johnson was on the bench. Odegaard was on the bench. Again, is this a case now where we'll sort of judge Ange for this last third of the season? Romero and Van der Ven a little way away still, but on the mend. It's an important last third of the season for Ange, isn't it, really, now? I think they sit in... they sit in 12th place at the moment, which isn't really good enough for Tottenham. But as they get players back and as Ange wants to play the way he wants to play, that's when I think we start to judge them.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Europa League as well, I think, is a huge one for them. Yeah. You know, with Postecoglou, the amount of times he said, the second season is when I bring the silverware in. So, but the one thing that I'm interested to see is that we see a recurring theme at Tottenham is players come back from injury. A lot of those same players then go out again. Yeah. So what we've seen with a number of players this season, and I think Van der Ven is a great example. He does his hamstring. Romero gets injured. They're both rushed back for, I think, the Chelsea game at home where they were winning 2-0.
Chelsea at by half time. Yeah, he was off. 20 minutes. Van der Ven was off.
So this is now the period where it's like, okay, the players are now coming back, but are those players going to remain fit for the rest of the season? Now, whether that's to do with the training, whether that's to do with the intensities in terms of the games, whether that's to do with coming back too quickly, but there's no doubt about it. When he's got his strongest 11, they are a match for anybody on their day. But it's now all about the consistency in keeping these players fit. If they can do that, then they could have a decent end to the season. But keeping the players fit is the most difficult problem. Yeah,
I've heard him talk about the medical team. I think they brought some more people in. They're looking at different ways to get people fit. Obviously, manage minutes. Today, he got players off the pitch after an hour or so and got them rested. So I just feel that I was kind of pleased to see Ange smiling again, because we've kind of seen a bit of a glum Ange, haven't we?
Yeah.
Looking down, not being happy, snapping at journalists a little bit, and it must have been a difficult time for him as well, going out of both domestic cups in the way that happened, and pressure on Europa. But I just think, and I'd like to hope Spurs have got something to look forward to. I kind of feel like league form's important, though. Europa League is going to be, the cup that they can try and win, and they certainly have a chance if they can get the best team out. But also, finishing top half for me, finishing somewhere around 8th position, and then a good run in Europa, it would be seen as the right kind of progress and moving in direction for Ange and his team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then you're sort of rescuing the season then, aren't you, as well?
Yeah, off the back of the season.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lowe, and as we head towards the end of an exciting Premier League season, make sure you like and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for more content like this.